the healing and recovery process part of it is a lot more work, but truly I think is where the joy of being free of porn and pornography and like that whole learning process, and then kind of like in that healing, finding like the things that are kind of driving you. Or I mean, we were saying just a little bit off air about emotional drivers, and yeah, I mean, emotional drivers is a big one that like you don't really think about. Like sometimes, you might be sad and so you want to go masturbate or look at porn to kind of try to lift the dopamine up in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if you're stressed, oh, I'm going to this for a reliever, and we don't really think about stuff. Kind of just like, and if you're not really, I guess, aware of what's going on in the world around you and what's affecting you and how you're feeling.
Yes.
A lot of times you don't even know why you're struggling with something because you're just like, I just went and looked at porn last week. I don't even know why I looked at porn last week. Like,
yes. we have to understand the why, and to do that, we have to become acquainted with our story. Hopefully, every single part of our story from childhood. Looking at it deeply, considering the narratives that have played out in our lives. We don't just become sexual creatures at 12, 13, 14 years old. It starts long before that. There's a lot of messaging. There can be things in our lives like sexual abuse as children. There can be all kinds of different factors that influence our sexual development even before we're even aware of what's happening. And so as an adult, keyword, as an adult, to look back and frame that narrative as an adult and become very acquainted with the narrative as an adult and get to look at it as an adult and process it as an adult. As children, we don't have the capacity to process everything. God just simply hasn't given it to us. But as adults, we can look back and reframe that, process the story. And the beautiful thing about doing that is that we develop this thing called awareness. So we have a trigger that pops up as an adult in our lives to, do pornography, to masturbate, whatever it is. We develop the awareness to be able to look at that and say, I know exactly what's behind this. It's X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And because we have the awareness, we can become aware of the trigger immediately. And then we can go with our game plan, and we have a game plan mapped out.
Yeah.
If it's loneliness, when we know exactly why we're feeling lonely, and we know exactly what the narrative of this is in our story, then in that moment, whether it's 11 o'clock or at night or 3 a.m. in the morning, we can go find community and have that need met. And everyone should have someone in their life, or ideally several people, that know every single good or bad thing you've ever done in your life. That's what community is.
Yeah.
And having that core group of people, those older people in our lives called mentors, very important. Then our peer groups, people our same age, kind of at the same place in life that we are. Both of those two categories, mentors and peers. But to have a group of people that we can call up at 3 a.m. in the morning when life is real, and go face the trigger, and learn the deeper meanings of the narrative. Process the trigger. If it's loneliness, you know what? Loading up with those people and going and getting a burger at 3 in the morning. Like that's how practical this is. And the Holy Spirit is there with us to help find and discover these meanings. It's a beautiful journey. It's a very
100%
incredible journey. And then the friendships, the authenticity that comes out of that is incredibly powerful. Being able to come into a room with other people who know every detail about your life. It's freeing.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
It's freeing.
Yeah. And there's so many times those conversations, like, they start at such a small level where you don't even think about it. Or even like, you might have some good buddies that you hang out with a lot, and you're like, yeah, these are good buddies and stuff. But the freedom and power to walk into a room or to be around people that when you don't even see you're doing something, they can call you out for it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm sorry, wait, what? And like but you see it though, very accurate, and you're like, oh yeah, no, that's very accurate. I was thinking that, like,
Yes.
and it's not like it's not like they're just telling you, trying to be like, you saying this and you're doing this, like that's on you. It's like, no, you're actually sitting there and you kind of look at it again, and you're like, oh yeah, I was doing that, wasn't I? And I was kind of shutting down that way and being like, I don't care, I don't want to do this or do that and stuff. I had a, an awesome dude in my life do that to me, and I wasn't expecting it. I was kind of at a point. I was like, I don't care, and I was getting ready to leave his house and stuff, and I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm just gonna go do this, and I was just done. It was a lot of hurt and stuff, and I was like, I'm done. I'm not gonna worry about this anymore. And he was like, okay, he's very graceful. He's letting me kind of get up, get ready to leave. And I was about to walk out. I started to walk out, and he was still. I was on the porch, and he was inside. And he's like, but you do care. And I stopped, and I was like, I just lost it. I was like, no, I don't care. I was like, I don't want to care. And he's like, but you do care. And he's like, and that's why it hurts so much. And I was like, come on. I was like, well, you couldn't just do that to me like that. And but looking back on, like, I'm forever grateful for that and stuff. I don't think I've expressed it enough to him really, but like just forever grateful to just kind of to realize like, whoa, this person actually like knows me well enough.
Yes.
And they don't necessarily know like every detail about my life, kind of thing, but they know me well enough that it's just like, oh, that's like, there's just that feeling of like, oh, you have all this excess energy. You have all this, extra everything because you're no longer having to keep up walls and try and protect yourself from these people and these people that say this about you. And you think this person may not like me. And so I don't really like this person. It's like, you can sit there and do that. Or like you can actually have that freedom to kind of just drop the walls. And then you find you have so much energy for stuff.
Yes. And, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about, we talked about accountability groups.
Yeah.
I think that's the key difference here of what we're just talking about now and the accountability groups. Accountability groups often do not require a lot of authenticity or vulnerability. It's kind of this present thing. Like, are you doing good now? Or are you doing poorly?
Yeah.
And we can answer that question and kind of walk away with zero vulnerability. Being in a close-knit community of guys or gals, with doing community with each other at the level where we know our stories. I know your story, you know mine.
Right.
We can't just show up and answer those questions in a surface kind of way.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing a deep dive. And that requires an entirely different that's an entirely different proposition than a surface level accountability group.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Surface level is definitely that. Yeah. How are you doing today?
Yes.
Oh, you struggled some last week. Hey, you know what? We're here for you, man. We're praying for you, brother. Well, we'll check in with you again next week. And your hope is just that they make it through the next 7 days.
Yeah. So
they can be like, hey, I didn't struggle this week. And you're like, hey, that's progress, man. I love that. That's progress. That's good. Now the next week. And it's like, well, sometimes encouragement in that's helpful.
Yeah.
And sometimes keeping track of how long it's been is helpful too. But at the same time, you don't want to get caught up and focused on that too, because really the biggest thing isn't just getting rid of porn and pornography entirely, getting porn and pornography out of your life, but it's the recovery process that helps and allows you even to just get rid of it entirely, where it's no longer a struggle. It's no longer something that you're like, oh, I really struggle with this. It's just like, what's the point?
Yeah. And the truth is you can stop porn and totally have a pornified mindset.
Yeah.
That plays out with you in your relationships, so the way you view and engage women.
Yeah.
And almost be at the same place as if you were literally engaging in porn, if the mindsets haven't been, rooted out with the help of the Holy Spirit.
And those are hard to get rid of because you've trained your mind, depending on how long you struggled, you've trained your mind for so long.
Yes.
And stuff where you got like say 11, 10, 15, 30 years on you that you've been training your brain to think this is the way we view the world. This is what we think about women. This is what, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're some like super like big egotistical dude who just like is like every woman's this and like whatever, get in the kitchen, clean the like stuff like that. Like, no, it doesn't mean that, but it means that you're still training your brain to think that like you know, hey, it's not even that you're saying like, oh, this person's object. It's not like
Mhm.
you're viewing everyone as objects, but you're still having that bona view of like, if I do this, I get this. If I say this here, then this kind of happens throughout life here, where like, and it doesn't even mean that you're trying to get sex from everyone either. It could just mean that you're trying to get some sort of emotional support or something from a woman, or some sort of emotional intimacy from a woman or a man or whoever. And so then you're kind of playing the cards right as they do in porn to get what you want.
Yeah, it's a very entitled way of thinking, a
Mm-hmm.
very objectifying way,
Yeah.
objectifying way,
Yeah.
objectified way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and it's incredibly destructive, and it can be very subtle
Yeah.
um, to the outside looking in.
Yeah.
But that's what porn does. It destroys. It makes us
Yeah.
less than human, and makes us consumers in our relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the healing and the recovery process, like that's yeah, the healing and recovery process is probably going to be it's gonna take the longest.
Yeah,
It's definitely the hardest. I mean,
it's brutal.
yeah.
It's the hard work of Romans 12 verse 1,
Yeah.
renewing our minds.
Yeah. But
Uh,
I mean, that's the whole I mean, I'd say that's the whole purpose
yeah.
of what Jesus came and did. He's made it so we can be free of our sins,
Yes.
so we can have a relationship with God. So that I believe that from what God does in that relationship with you, as you're relating to Him, you go back through your life, all
Yes.
the things that's ever happened in your life with God. You go back through all that stuff to then
Mhm.
have that connection with the Father, and even in community with other people. Because it's not, I mean, it's not good for us to try and just be lone wolves out on our own, try to go do stuff. I mean, some people think they might like that better,
Yes.
but if you look, there might be some hurt on that too. So you might need to kind of
Yes.
look through that.
Yes.
Um, yeah. The healing the healing part and the recovery part has probably been the most confusing and yet the most rewarding
Mm.
at the same time from my own life. And, I've only kind of just started to scratch the surface mostly
Yes.
and stuff, but the amount of stuff that's like the trying to figure it out and going through and be like, hey,
Yes.
why am I struggling with this? Because now it's like, from what before was if you get tempted, you kind of just you go to porn pornography and you just fall
Mhm.
into it. You fall into temptation. You're like, oops, my bad. I screwed up in this area again, guys. Next week I'll work on doing better. And I'm gonna try to run to God more instead of
Mhm.
porn pornography. Okay, and then the next time comes up, and you're not thinking, oh, I need to run to God. Even if you think I need to run to God, you can still go and lust anyways. And so
Right.
it's like, well, you're not really still learning through of like, hang on a second. And stepping back going, wait a second, why am I even struggling? Like
Mhm.
what's going on here? Like,
What is happening?
yeah, what's happening? And I think that's starting to ask that question has helped a ton in my own life of kind of trying to finally, get to those points of being like, okay, like, why am I struggling? Like what is this? Like what is going on here? And yeah, they are just urges. I was put really well to me, like they're just urges. They will go away and stuff. So then just figuring out, okay, why are you feeling that at this time? Someone did this for you. Okay, why are you feeling this way all of a sudden
Right.
about it? Like is it just kind of what
Yes.
you need and what you kind of used to, and you're like, oh, I've only ever got this through porn and
Yes.
pornography and
Yes.
my own idea of like a self love kind of thing, but a self
Iceberg
love
to
to an
trigger.
extreme, yeah.
Iceberg. Figure
Mhm.
out what the larger
Yeah,
part of this story is, which is under the water.
yeah,
The behavior is the small part of the
yeah,
iceberg that is above the water.
yeah,
The iceberg, as we know, much larger under the water than it is above.
yeah,
And it's actually that's where the emotional drivers are.
yeah.
And that's what I hear you saying, trying to figure out what that is.
It's fun. It's
Very
hard.
good.
It's hard, but it's
It's very hard.
definitely worth it.
Yes.
So, like, how do we? There's the idea of like, should I tell others about it and stuff? And something I remember saying not too long ago was it's really important to find people in your life that say care about you and stuff, and that want what's best for you and want to help you out in your journey and your walk and that recovery process. But how would you go about like finding the right person in your life or just kind of in a general sense,
Sure.
to discuss the stuff with?
Yeah.
Because some people might, like you're saying, you can have the peers, you can have your peers, and you can have your mentors,
Yes.
And I think it's easier a lot of times, depending on the person, to either talk to one or the other, where it's only talk to your peers, or you only go to mentors about it and you never talk to your peers about it. And so, like, at what point do you decide, like, you know, like, hey, this person seems to care a lot about my life. Maybe I should start talking to them about some of this stuff.
Well, it's important to find the right person. Not everybody, not just anyone is the right person. You know, you can be discerning, find someone who understands, has some understanding about the heart, from a biblical perspective. Someone that can be a guide, and someone that can work in tandem with the Holy Spirit and help the concepts of looking at your story, looking at those emotional drivers, and helping you work those, helping bringing those into clarity, into vivid clarity. So find someone who has the gifting or the tool set to actually make that happen in your life. Maybe that's a youth pastor. Maybe it's your pastor. Maybe it's, a lay person in your congregation. I've reached outside of that into some counselors, who've had huge impacts, positive impacts in my life. And so the important part is you find someone who is well acquainted with this journey and can be a guide.
Yeah.
And frankly, a human being who can be the hands and feet of Jesus in your life and help this work out in a very deep way.
Yeah. And finding that person who is willing to do that and is willing to talk and have this conversation does take you being kind of open and vulnerable about struggling with it and stuff. And you might find people that are like, yeah, dude, I get it, man. I struggle too at times, and yeah, but they're not necessarily there to actually like help or whatnot. And there's some people that are like, hey, dude, look, I'd love to help you, man, but I can't keep you accountable. You need to find other people to keep you accountable and stuff. Like, I'll be there if you need help and stuff, but I can't keep you accountable. That's one of the relationships I have, is a really good relationship that we discuss a lot of stuff. We don't get together every week, but we discuss a lot of this stuff. And that's kind of one of the things that he has said to me multiple times. He's like, hey, bro, listen to, he's like, I love you to death. He's like, I really love what you're doing. He's like, but I can't be the one to keep you accountable in this. You need to go out and find other people to help keep you accountable.
Yes.
And I think that for me has been kind of an interesting journey and process to figure it out, because even in that, like, even in that, he still kept me accountable in a lot of areas, just by having conversations with him, where I start to kind of grow and start to dive deeper into stuff. And then even like the youth, kind of more of our youth pastor at church, having conversations with him too. I mean, like, you can just sit for, and at the same time, I don't hang out with him every week either. And so it's not like it has to be, like a weekly thing or a daily thing and stuff, but like, it needs to be a relationship of which that you are being very honest with each other, regardless. And that you're walking through life and they care about you. And like you're saying, they have a gift for helping you.
Right.
In that, instead of just the idea of like,
yes,
go out and find your peers and be like, hey, it's comfortable to talk to these guys. I'm gonna keep talking to these guys. Because there's the idea you can only ever lead someone as far as you've been led yourself. And so there's that.
Someone who has the ability to cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Even if you're not willing. And that's a big statement there. Someone who's willing to cut to the chase, even if you're not willing or not feeling, or maybe not even seeing the need for it. Like someone who can look you in the eye or me in the eye and say, Randal, what is really going on there? What is really going on?
Yeah.
Has the insight and can point you and lead you down the pathway of healing and asking those all important questions in your life, just like Jesus did to the people around him. Yeah. Those $1 million questions that really expose the heart, And, that's where we change. That's how we change. Yeah. Is, looking at our heart in those kinds of ways. Again, as we've said before, addressing the emotional drivers. Yeah. Which is often those parts of our stories that we just have isolated away in a closet or in a filing cabinet.
Yeah.
They're actually not in a filing cabinet. They're actually really influencing our present.
You've kind of forgot about it. They're kind of basically working in the character that you are. Not even though you think it's behind the scenes, it's very much in front.
Yes.
And you don't even really notice that
Yes.
they're the ones calling the shots because they're like, hey, I don't feel this way. We're gonna do this now. And you're like, and then you know something that happens, and you're like, well, why am I reacting this way? It's like, well, if you don't even know, that's or if there's something else leading you, not just what you're actively thinking. That's not necessarily what's leading you so much as something you feel like it's behind the scenes, but actually is in the most forefront of your mind, pulling everything, but just isn't wanting to let you know that it's there because you've pushed it so far away, thinking that I need to protect myself from this.
Yes.
When the truth is, it's not that you need to go back and say that this is a good thing, but to go back and to walk through that again and say, hey, what all did happen here, and what all is affecting me now.
Yes.
And yeah, you were talking a little bit. This is probably, I guess, might have been, depending on how I split this, might be the last part. That a bit where you're talking on how, like, from an early age, kind of you can before you even really know what's going on, whether it's from sexual abuse or sexual like exploration as kids and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think there's so much there. I mean, still to unpack of like children kind of like sexually going out, and because you are, I mean, I would say you're explorative as a child, whether it's with yourself sexually or with if it's siblings or whoever's around you, cousins or whatever. I mean, it's a lot more, I guess, common than we might think, especially in like I know probably some in homeschool groups, probably maybe even in some Mennonite groups and stuff, where like the idea of like playing doctor in the barn or something. I don't have much on that to discuss myself because I'm still like looking through on that stuff and trying to figure that stuff out. But maybe I don't know if you have.
Well, I think we're sexual beings from birth.
Mm-hmm.
Our sexual story starts at birth,
Mm-hmm.
and we are infants, and then we're children. And ideally, we have parents in our lives who can be that guide to us as, and keyword, as children, and guide us down the pathway. Oftentimes, parents have stories of shame that haven't been processed, that make these all-important discussions, it prohibits them, makes them awkward.
Yeah.
We talk about having the talk.
Right.
That's never going to cut the mustard.
Right.
We need to have discussions all the way through life, from just with our very young children all the way, to adulthood. Yeah. Normal, regular discussions without shame, where we can talk about anything. And especially with children, to be able to show up in those conversations without the shame, because children are picking up everything. They're picking up all of that in ways that adults sometimes just don't understand. And if those discussions start as young children loaded up with shame, that's an incredible primer for addiction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And so, for parents to be able to come into and guide the children and teach children what safe touch is, what it is, what it's not, what unsafe touch is, and be able to establish a sex positive, environment for the child, without shame, and guide the child sexually from a young age. Yeah. That's an incredible gift to give to a child. And when that is not there, it is almost certain that sexual addiction will be a much larger issue. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd see that a lot.
But it's important to realize, we're talking, we're guiding children. We're guiding children, and when children are crossing those boundaries, that's more of a reflection on the parents than it is the child, and it's an opportunity for the parents to, if something happens, for them to be the adult in the room and redirect the behavior to redirect the behavior. Because as little children, those exploratory kind of things, they can go into harmful ways, of course. They can go into harmful areas, but most times the behavior just simply needs to be redirected in non-shaming ways. And again, probably don't have the time to discuss,
Right.
you know,
not the different podcast. Or
yeah,
something.
possibly.
Maybe.
It could be.
Yeah.
But it's a great question.
Yeah. And I think there's so many times that it's because it is so like shamed and stuff, trying to figure it out, even trying to figure out like,
yes,
the whole backstory behind it. Why are you struggling with this? Why are you doing this? Just all that stuff. Like, I think that's something it's, I don't hear it talked about much at all. And so I think there's definitely a need for it and stuff. But at the same time, like, still trying to break it down.
Yeah, I hear you.
It is so hard. It's so complicated too, because there's so many areas that, like, depending on what side you lean towards or what side or where you kind of stand on it, it could easily be something that everyone's just like, you are so wrong. Like, what is going on? Or it's the side that you're not doing enough. You need to do more. And so there's this huge thing, and it is. I mean, it's very similar to, I think, a balance act, where you're figuring out because each kid might be different, and so you're balancing. I don't know. I've never had kids, but. I thought I'd preface that's just that no one was thinking that I'm over here like I've had kids and I know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about in this situation, but I think that maybe it's more of a balancing act where where each kid might be a little bit different, and so you're kind of balancing stuff.
Every child is different,
yeah,
for sure.